Tell me exactly what happened.
I just walked in and she's laying on the bathroom floor and there's blood everywhere.
The last thing Mo did on this earth was scream.
Well, we are now hearing from the former lover of a woman at the center of a twisted and deadly love triangle trial.
On a warm May evening in Austin, Texas, Colin Strickland's phone rang with news that would shatter his world. Do you know Anna? She passed away last night. Just hours earlier, Anna Moriah, Mo Wilson, had been alive, laughing, riding, and chasing her dream as one of America's brightest cycling stars.
Here with the fabulous Mo Wilson. You are ready.
I'm ready.
You're ready.
I'm so excited to be here. It feels like the first big race of the year, so I'm ready to kick it off.
By nightfall, she was gone. At first, police thought it was a burglary, but the clues told another story. This wasn't random, it was personal. And as investigators dug deeper, they uncovered a chilling triangle of love, jealousy, and betrayal, one that would lead them to a killer hiding in plain sight. This is the story of Moriah Wilson. Her friends called her Mo. Her rivals called her unstoppable. But to someone else, she was a threat that couldn't be ignored. Before she became the center of a national headline, Moriah Wilson was simply a young woman chasing a dream. Born in 1996 in Vermont, Mo grew up surrounded by mountains, skis, and bicycles. Her family was athletic to the core. Her parents skied competitively, and her brother Matthew also chased adventure sports. From the very start, Mo was wired for speed. As a teenager, she was already making a name for herself as a skier. She trained at Burke Mountain Academy, one of the toughest ski programs in the country, where students rise before dawn, train in the snow, and balance academics with punishing workouts. Mo didn't just keep up, she thrived, but skiing was only the beginning. At Dartmouth College, where she earned her engineering degree in 2019, Mo discovered gravel cycling, a brutal endurance sport that pushes athletes across dirt trails, rocky back roads, and endless miles of open terrain. It didn't take long for her to dominate. By her mid-20s, she was being called the next great American cyclist. In just a few short seasons, she had already won some of the sport's toughest races and was preparing to compete at the highest level. To those who knew her, Mo was relentless, but also humble. She trained with quiet determination, smiled easily, and treated rivals with respect. She wasn't in the sport for fame. She was in it because she loved it.
Moriah Wilson, the winner of round one.
Friends said she radiated joy when she was on a bike.
First big race of the year, so I'm ready to kick it off.
In May 2022, Mo flew to Texas to compete in the upcoming Gravel Locos race, one of the biggest events on the calendar. She was staying with a friend, Caitlin Cash, in Austin. For Mo, it was just another race week, another chance to push herself, another opportunity to shine. She had no idea that in the shadows of her success, someone else was watching her with a very different intensity. Mo's star was rising, but jealousy was waiting just around the corner. The love triangle. To understand the brutal murder of Moriah Mo Wilson, we need to rewind the clock, back before that terrible night in May 2022. This wasn't a random act of violence, nor the work of a faceless stranger. At the heart of this story lay a tangled relationship, a love triangle that would prove fatal. Colin Strickland was a cycling star in his own right, known on the gravel racing circuit as a fierce competitor and a charismatic figure. Based in Austin, Texas, he had sponsors, fans, and the kind of reputation that made him one of the sport's brightest names.
My name is Colin Strickland. I'm a bicycle racer based in Austin, Texas.
On again, he was also in a long-term, off-again relationship with Caitlin Armstrong, a yoga teacher and licensed realtor. They had been together since 2019, sharing a home, a social circle, and by all appearances, a future. But like many relationships, theirs was complicated, and by late 2021, the cracks were showing. That fall, Colin and Caitlin separated briefly. During that break, Colin met 25-year-old Moriah Wilson, a rising star in American cycling. Mo was everything the sport admired: talented, disciplined, and modest despite her growing fame. The chemistry between Colin and Mo was immediate. They dated for about a month, sharing rides, dinners, and conversations. But when Colin eventually reconciled with Caitlin, his connection with Mo didn't vanish. Instead, it simmered quietly in the background, hidden, but very much alive.
Colin Strickland was a top biker, and he was also friends with Mo.
For Caitlin Armstrong, this wasn't just a minor issue. It was a wound that refused to heal. She knew about Colin's brief romance with Mo, and friends would later testify that she struggled to move past it. According to those who knew her, Caitlin became increasingly jealous, increasingly watchful. She checked Colin's phone. She noticed messages. And Colin, recognizing the volatility of the situation, began to hide the truth. That jealousy wasn't contained to whispers inside their home. It spread into the wider cycling community. Friends and acquaintances later recalled that Caitlin displayed an intense streak whenever Mo's name was mentioned. At one point, she even confronted Mo directly, warning her to stay away from Colin. But Caitlin didn't just seethe in silence. Prosecutors later showed how she actively tracked Mo's movements. Mo used the fitness app Strava, popular among cyclists and runners, to log their workouts and routes. She had not enabled privacy settings, meaning her location data was visible. Investigators believe Caitlin used that information to monitor where Mo was and when. In the weeks before the murder, Caitlin reportedly checked these routes, seeing when Mo was in Austin, when she was out riding, and perhaps when she was with Colin. When love becomes a competition, every secret, every text, every silence becomes fuel. And on that night in Austin, that fuel ignited. The day of the murder, May 11th, 2022. May 11th, 2022, began like any other day for Anna Moriah, Mo Wilson. She was in Austin, Texas, preparing for the Gravel Locos race, one of the most competitive gravel cycling events in the country. That morning, she texted Colin Strickland, her former flame and fellow cyclist. They agreed to meet later for a swim at Deep Eddy Pool, a public spring-fed swimming spot popular with Austinites.
I found Mo inside the residence. It was pretty grisly scene. She had been shot multiple times.
The day passed quietly until the late afternoon. Colin picked Mo up around 5 p.m., and together they spent time at the pool before heading to Poolburger, a quirky bar and restaurant nearby. Witnesses described the two as relaxed, laughing, and comfortable in each other's company. For Mo, it was likely just an evening of catching up with a friend. For Colin, it was companionship with someone he still admired. But for Caitlin Armstrong, who would later learn about this outing, it was betrayal unfolding in real time.
Austin police!
Do I stop? I don't know what happened. I just walked in on her.
Around 8:30 p.m., Colin drove Mo back to her friend Caitlin Cash's apartment on Maple Avenue, where she was staying during the race weekend. He dropped her off at the door, gave a quick goodbye, and left. Within minutes, Mo was alone in the house. At 9:15 p.m., Cash returned home. She had been out for dinner, and as she walked into her home, she immediately sensed something was wrong. The lights were off, but there was an eerie stillness in the air. She called out for Mo, but there was no answer. Then she walked into the bathroom and froze. Mo was lying on the floor, unresponsive, her body surrounded by blood. Cash's voice shook as she dialed 911. "My friend is staying with me, and I just walked in and she's laying on the bathroom floor and there's blood."
Exactly what happened.
I just walked in and she's laying on the bathroom floor and there's blood everywhere.
The dispatcher's voice was calm, trying to extract details. "Is she awake?" "No, she's not awake," Cash stammered. "There's blood all over her face, on the back of her head." Paramedics rushed to the scene, but it was too late. Moriah Wilson had been shot multiple times, 2 bullets to the head, 1 to the chest. Medical examiners later revealed that she was likely killed instantly. Spinal fluid was found pooling on the floor, proof that the bullets had pierced her skull. There had never been a chance to save her.
Yeah, I had so. Nobody heard any shots? We don't know how long she's been down? No. And that's it. Pretty close to it. Yeah. Oh, we got CSF in there.
In just a few hours, a young athlete's promising future was erased. And as detectives pieced together the night, they began to see the outlines of something far darker than chance. This was not chaos. This was a plan. The morning after Moriah Wilson's murder, Austin detectives faced the grim reality. A 25-year-old athlete shot multiple times inside a friend's home with no immediate suspect. At first glance, it seemed like a break-in gone wrong.
Austin police!
32. Do I stop? I don't know what happened. I just walked in on her.
After all, her $10,000 racing bike had vanished, but when that bike was found abandoned in a patch of brush nearby, clean, unscratched, and clearly placed there, the theory crumbled. Whoever killed Mo wasn't trying to steal. They were trying to send a message and to misdirect the investigation. Inside the house, detectives collected what little physical evidence the killer had left behind. 3 shell casings scattered across the bathroom floor confirmed a 9mm weapon was used.
There's one right there. You sit right there. Where? There's one right there. Okay.
Those bullets. The gun itself was nowhere to be found, but the casings would later prove invaluable. They also noticed details that told them this wasn't a random intruder. There were no signs of forced entry. Nothing else in the home had been disturbed. Whoever had pulled the trigger had one purpose, and that purpose was Mo Wilson.
And they dropped her off at a house on Maple Avenue where Wilson was staying. We have surveillance video that shows an SUV leaving where Wilson was staying. Authorities are now trying to find that vehicle. It's a black Jeep Grand Cherokee, and U.S. Marshals say they got about 30 tips but really need the public's help in finding Armstrong.
The first step was eliminating the obvious. Caitlin Cash, the friend who had found Mo's body, was tested for gunshot residue. It came back negative. Investigators reasoned that, given the confined space of the bathroom, anyone who fired a weapon there would have been marked with residue. Cash wasn't. Her emotional distress on the 911 call was real. Her story consistent. She was ruled out. That left another name, Colin Strickland. Strickland was the last known person to see Mo alive. His proximity to the victim and his complicated history with her made him the logical next focus. When police sat him down for questioning, Colin admitted the truth he had first tried to conceal. Yes, he and Mo had once been romantically involved. Yes, he had continued to see her, even after getting back together with his girlfriend, Caitlin Armstrong. And yes, on the very night of Mo's death, he had been with her.
He bed yesterday afternoon, and then we started her, and I stopped her for
But as detectives listened, they realized Colin's confession cut both ways. It gave him a motive. Jealousy, rejection, a love triangle, but it also gave them a much bigger lead, Caitlin Armstrong. Investigators turned to surveillance footage from the neighborhood. A neighbor's Ring camera had picked up not just the sound of gunfire, but also the sight of a black Jeep Grand Cherokee slowly pulling away from the scene. Hours later, another camera caught the same Jeep circling the block, headlights dim, moving deliberately. It was an eerie detail. Whoever drove that car wasn't lost. They were hunting. Detectives didn't have to look far to trace the vehicle. When they visited Colin's house, they saw it parked in the driveway. Same model, same bicycle rack attached to the rear, same black paint. But the Jeep wasn't Colin's, it was Caitlin Armstrong's. The implications were immediate. Armstrong had the car, she had the connection, and as police would soon learn, she had the gun. Only months earlier, Colin had purchased 2 handguns, one for himself, one for Caitlin. One of them, a Sig Sauer P365, would later be matched by forensic ballistics experts to the shell casings left at the crime scene. Investigators also uncovered records that Armstrong had visited a shooting range with her sister, practicing with that very weapon. What began as circumstantial suspicion was rapidly becoming a direct link, but detectives knew better than to rush. They had to eliminate Colin as a suspect once and for all. His phone records showed he had texted Caitlin around 8:30 p.m., telling her he was leaving dinner. By 9:30 p.m., he was across town. The timestamps matched. The Jeep in the alley could not have been his. Colin wasn't the killer, but he had led police straight to the person who might be. Armed with this evidence, investigators brought Caitlin Armstrong in for questioning.
You're here for a warrant right now, I guess. Are you familiar with what you have going on with that?
I have no idea.
The pretext for the interrogation was flimsy but effective. Caitlin had an outstanding warrant for a minor offense, theft of service, connected to a failure to pay for cosmetic procedures. Detectives used it as a reason to bring her in, buying themselves a few precious hours to probe her involvement in Mo Wilson's death. At first, the questioning seemed casual, even routine. The detective maintained a light tone, telling her it was nothing serious. Caitlin sat stiff in her chair, her arms crossed, her eyes darting between the detective and the door. But when the subject turned to the black Jeep Grand Cherokee, her Jeep, the atmosphere shifted instantly.
The reason I'm here is because your name came up during a conversation with Colin. I think there's a lot more information that you have that can kind of explain some of the stuff he's saying.
I've never heard of this warrant before. I don't know what you're talking about, and it doesn't seem like you can give me any information on it that you want to review. Are they knocking here?
I think it's for something else. So with the warrants,
investigators told Caitlin that her vehicle had been seen near the Maple Avenue house the night Mo was killed. Her reaction was subtle, but telling. She turned her head sharply, rolled her eyes, and exhaled, a flash of anger crossing her face. Detectives noticed. It was the kind of involuntary slip they live for, the crack in the mask that reveals the truth underneath. Still, Armstrong denied everything. She insisted she had nothing to do with the murder. She claimed she hadn't known Mo personally, had no reason to be in that neighborhood, and certainly hadn't fired a gun. But her denials lacked weight, especially once detectives reminded her that Colin had spent the evening with Mo. The detective pressed harder. He told her this wasn't about blaming anyone blindly, but about clearing the record. He suggested there could be an explanation. Maybe she had just been in the area. Maybe she had been upset but not violent. It was a classic technique. Offer the suspect a softer landing in hopes they'll step into the trap. But Caitlin wouldn't bite. Instead, she leaned back, folded her arms tighter, and said 7 words that changed the course of the interrogation. "I think I need an attorney present." With that, the interview was over.
I feel like I should have an attorney present.
So that's totally your choice.
Legally, once a suspect asks for counsel, questioning must stop. Detectives had pushed as far as they could, and then came the bombshell. The minor warrant they had used to detain her was invalid. The birth date didn't match. Legally, they had no grounds to hold her. Within minutes, Caitlin Armstrong was free to walk out of the police station. For detectives, it was a devastating moment. They had their prime suspect in custody. They had her car on camera at the crime scene. They had her gun matched to the bullets. They had motive, but because of a paperwork error, she slipped through their hands. From that moment, Caitlin knew the walls were closing in. She wasn't naive. She had seen the evidence. She understood the questions, and she could read the suspicion in the detectives' eyes. Instead of waiting for them to come back with an airtight warrant, she began plotting her escape. The cracks in Caitlin's story were now wide open, but instead of collapsing under pressure, she slipped through them and straight into the shadows. Detectives had let her slip through their fingers because of a paperwork error, but Armstrong knew the truth. They were coming back for her. She had seen the evidence piling up, the Jeep on surveillance cameras, the questions about her gun, the mounting suspicion in the detective's voice. Staying in Texas meant certain arrest. Running meant a chance to disappear. Within days, she began moving like someone shedding a skin. First, she sold her black Jeep Grand Cherokee to a car dealership in Austin. Surveillance footage showed her casually walking into the dealership, smiling, chatting, as if nothing were wrong. Next, Armstrong turned to money. According to investigators, she withdrew thousands in cash from her bank accounts, draining resources she might need to survive on the run. Then came her boldest move yet. She used her sister's passport to book a one-way flight out of the United States. On May 18th, just a week after Mo Wilson's murder, Armstrong boarded a flight from Newark International Airport to San Jose, Costa Rica. Her plan was clear: leave Austin, leave the US, and leave behind her identity.
Just been through a real traumatizing breakup, and she hadn't healed from it yet and wasn't ready to get close at all, so we were just being friends.
In Costa Rica, Armstrong headed for Santa Teresa, a remote beach town on the Nicoya Peninsula, famous for its surfing, yoga retreats, and expat community. To most visitors, it was a paradise. For Armstrong, it was a perfect hiding place. She blended in as another traveler, another yoga instructor looking to start fresh. Witnesses would later say she taught yoga classes, surfed, and even looked for jobs at local hostels. But she wasn't the same Caitlin Armstrong anymore.
Pretty came in, introduced herself as a yoga teacher, which is basically anybody else down here.
In her 43 days as a fugitive, she had gone to great lengths to change her appearance. Photos released after her arrest showed a woman who looked familiar, yet altered. Her once long light brown hair was chopped short and dyed darker. Her nose appeared bandaged, raising suspicions that she had undergone cosmetic surgery to avoid recognition. There was bruising and discoloration around her eyes, which she explained to locals as the result of a surfing accident.
Ari was a strange person, but I met her right outside the tattoo shop, Good Life Tattoos, and her friends were getting tattooed, so she was waiting out there on the bench, and I was out there having a beer in the lounge, and it became apparent to me that she was trying to have a conversation, trying to get to know me.
For weeks, she lived quietly, moving between hostels and beachside rentals, paying cash, using false names. She thought she was invisible. But back in the United States, U.S. Marshals hadn't stopped hunting. The Marshals tracked her every step through a trail of digital breadcrumbs, flight records, passport data, bank withdrawals. They even discovered she had been searching for yoga jobs online, and that gave them an idea. In late June 2022, the U.S. Marshals set up a fake social media ad in Costa Rica, seeking a yoga instructor for a retreat. It was bait, and Caitlin Armstrong took it. She reached out, offered her services, and arranged a meeting. On June 29th, 2022, after 43 days on the run, Armstrong was arrested at a hostel in Santa Teresa. When officers approached her, she insisted she wasn't Caitlin Armstrong. She used a false name, claiming to be a tourist, but fingerprints and physical identifiers confirmed the truth. The fugitive yoga teacher had been caught. The U.S. Marshals later described her capture as one of the most unusual they'd seen. Here was a woman accused of cold-blooded murder, hiding in a surf town, teaching yoga, mingling with tourists, and planning a new life. She thought she could blend in, one officer said, but you can't hide forever. She had slipped through police hands once. She had lived a double life for 43 days in paradise.
A 43-day fugitive investigation.
And even behind bars, Caitlin Armstrong would still try to run. Trial and shocking escape attempt. When Caitlin Armstrong was flown back to Texas in July 2022, the international headlines died down. But the case was far from over. For prosecutors, the evidence was strong. Surveillance footage, phone records, ballistics, and a motive rooted in jealousy. But Armstrong wasn't done fighting. Even in custody, she carried herself with a calm, almost detached composure, as if she still believed she could slip away.
The last thing Mo did on this earth was scream in terror. Those screams are followed by
The trial date was set for late 2023, giving attorneys time to prepare. Armstrong pleaded not guilty to first-degree murder, insisting she had nothing to do with Moriah Wilson's death. Her defense team argued that the evidence was circumstantial, that her presence near the crime scene didn't prove she pulled the trigger, and that ballistics matches weren't as ironclad as prosecutors claimed. But behind closed doors, Armstrong was planning something much bolder than legal defense. On October 11th, 2023, just weeks before her trial was set to begin, Armstrong was escorted from jail to a medical appointment at a doctor's office. It was supposed to be routine. 2 corrections officers accompanied her, keeping watch, but Armstrong had been preparing for this moment for months. As she was led into the building, she asked to use the restroom. The officers allowed her inside. Moments later, she shoved her way past them, sprinting down a hallway, and flung herself out of a bathroom window. Witnesses Witnesses outside the clinic saw her land awkwardly, scramble to her feet, and take off running down the street.
It happened while she was at a doctor's appointment in South Austin. Armstrong has been in custody for more than a year now, accused of killing Moriah Wilson here in Austin and then fleeing to Costa Rica. Sheriff's spokesperson Kristen Dark said yesterday deputies never lost sight of Armstrong. Right now, we do not know whether she will face any additional charges for trying to run away.
For nearly 10 minutes, Armstrong was free again. Surveillance footage captured her dashing through parking lots, dodging traffic, her orange jumpsuit partially concealed by a jacket she had stolen. Officers sprinted after her. It was chaos. Drivers honking, pedestrians pointing, sirens blaring. Armstrong vaulted a fence, sprinted across grass, and tried to disappear into the surrounding neighborhood. But this time, her luck ran out. Officers tackled her to the ground not far from the clinic, her face pressed into the dirt as handcuffs snapped back onto her wrists. Prosecutors now had more than a jealous motive and forensic evidence. They had proof of consciousness of guilt. Innocent people don't bolt from custody through a bathroom window.
And I expect at the end of this trial that we will be talking about doubt.
When her trial opened on October 30th, 2023, the courtroom was packed. Reporters, cycling fans, friends of Mo Wilson, and curious locals all wanted to see the woman accused of killing one of the sport's brightest stars. The prosecution laid out its case methodically. They showed the jury surveillance footage of the black Jeep circling Maple Avenue. They presented cell phone data showing Armstrong's phone was turned off during the exact time of the murder, then reactivated shortly after. They called ballistics experts who testified that the SIG Sauer P365 owned by Armstrong was a significant match to the casings found at the crime scene, and they brought in Colin Strickland himself. Colin's testimony was awkward, even painful. He admitted to his brief romance with Mo Wilson, admitted to hiding texts and changing her name in his phone to prevent fights with Caitlin. He described Armstrong as jealous, but said he never believed she was capable of violence. That belief, prosecutors argued, cost Mo Wilson her life.
I think Caitlin would fight somebody? No, I honestly don't, because it would be too... I don't know. Do I think Caitlin could kill somebody? No, I don't.
The defense tried to poke holes. They suggested other people could have driven Armstrong's Jeep. They challenged the reliability of ballistics comparisons. They painted Colin as an unfaithful boyfriend whose shifting story couldn't be trusted. But with every rebuttal, the prosecution brought the focus back to the evidence: the Jeep, the phone records, the gun, the escape attempt.
When you shot Moriah in the heart, you shot me in my heart. You shot Eric and Matt in their hearts. You shot Moriah's cousins and aunts and uncles.
After 2 weeks of testimony, the jury didn't take long. On November 16, 2023, Caitlin Armstrong was found guilty of first-degree murder. The sentencing was swift, 90 years in prison, with eligibility for parole after 30 years.
In the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, institutional intervention for a period of 90 years.